Hey guys, welcome to Punky's Pro Wrestling. I wanted to do my weekly wrestling video today because I do have some news. So, okay. Before I get into this, let me get into the other news. Marie Malenko, Lacey Simon, Dean Malenko's daughter, his younger daughter. I was right, by the way. If you'll recall, we talked about her in a previous video, and I said had to be Lacey. It couldn't be Larissa because she's too old to start wrestling. She's almost 29. Well, she'll be 28 in December, which isn't that old, but to start wrestling. Made her WWE NXT in-ring debut. Not her television debut yet. Rey Mysterio has been named general manager of AAA. Don't ask me to pronounce it, but it's the Mexican wrestling that WWE now owns. AEW is looking to bring back their Fight for the Fallen to support ALS in honor of female wrestler Rebel. They also sell Rebel Heart bracelets, with all proceeds going to her. And trial in the shareholders' lawsuit starts June 8th in Delaware. Shareholders versus WWE/TKO over their merger. In Delaware, it's done by judge, no jury. That could be good or bad, depends. Okay. This is what the lawsuit states. The chairman, Vince McMahon, set up the TKO deal to make sure his standing in WWE was kept firm. This came after the intimate misconduct allegations against McMahon in summer 2022. The plaintiffs, the shareholders, are claiming that McMahon went with Endeavor CEO Ari Emanuel as the buyer because of their pre-existing relationship and the security of Emanuel keeping McMahon on board post-merger. The plaintiffs feel that other bidders did not have a fair shot at attempting to acquire WWE. Plaintiffs and defendants plan on calling McMahon and Emanuel as live witnesses in the courtroom. Also on the plaintiffs' list is Nick Khan, which is the president of WWE, TKO executive Mark Shapiro, and Rain banker Jeff Sine, who advised WWE on the merger deal. Vince McMahon has separate legal counsel from his fellow defendants, Nick Khan, Paul Levesque. Again, Nick Khan is the president, Paul Levesque is the chief operating officer. Okay, so the plaintiffs intend to call live, meaning in the courtroom, Vince McMahon, who was the executive chairman of WWE/TKO. So he was on the board of TKO too? They shouldn't have been allowed to... yeah, no. Ari Emanuel, TKO CEO and chairman of then Endeavor CEO. And then Endeavor CEO. Because it's not Endeavor anymore, it's TKO. Mark Shapiro, TKO president and COO and Endeavor president. Jeffrey Sine, Rain Baker. I'm not, R-A-I-N-E. I'm not sure what that means. Frank Riddick, who was the WWE CFO, which is the Chief Financial Officer, and he was a board member. Andrew Schillheimer, TKO, Chief Financial Officer, and also Chief Financial Officer for UFC. Brendan Houlihan, expert witness. James Canessa, also an expert witness. Plaintiffs may call live or by deposition Jeffrey Speed, WWE board member, Stephanie McMahon, WWE executive and board member, Marty Patterson, Liberty Media president and CEO. I'm assuming that's all related. Steve Pammon, who was a WWE board member. Defendants intended to call live. Several witnesses also appear on the plaintiffs' list. George Barrios, a WWE board member at the time and former executive. Brad Blum, former WWE executive. Ari Emanuel. Daniel Lee, who was an advisor in the process from Moelis, was a managing director at that company. Paul Finger, JP Morgan managing director, which was an advisor. Nick Khan, WWE president and at the time board member. Steve Koonin, TKO board member, then WWE board member. See, this is not right. They had overlapping board members. That shouldn't have been allowed to happen. It's a conflict of interest. Paul Levesque, WWE, as I mentioned, Chief Content Officer. I said Chief Operating Officer, Chief Content Officer. Then board member and executive. Vince McMahon, Frank Riddick, Andrew Schellmer, Mark Shapiro, Jeffrey Sine, Michelle Wilson, then WWE board member and former WWE executive, Mark Zhu, TKO Chief Strategy Officer, and at the time Endeavor executive, Doug Pearlman, expert witness, Professor Stephen Salaga, expert witness, Professor David C. Smith, expert witness, Matthew Archer, shareholder plaintiff, Dennis Palkin, shareholder plaintiff. And Vice Chancellor J. Travis Laster will hear the case. I know a lot of that is like boring and whatever, but it was important because hearing all these people were on both boards of directors at the time, that is, what do you call it? It's, like I said, it's a conflict of interest that never should have been allowed to happen. In my opinion. You can't say, look, I can't run my company anymore, but I'm going to sell it to you because I know you'll keep me on my board and I'm already on your board. It doesn't work that way. It's a conflict of interest. So, I'm going to keep drinking because I have to do a sample. Anyway. It doesn't work that way. One of the people that tried to buy the company offered way more money for it. Which is what the shareholders are mad about. I know Tony Khan offered way more money for it. And why would that matter to shareholders? Well, let me try to explain. Basically, it would mean the shares are worth more. They would get more money from someone paying more money for the acquisition of the company. And if Tony Khan did it right, the way he did Ring of Honor, and saved Ring of Honor, and kept it separate, maybe even kept Triple H in charge, Shawn Michaels in charge at NXT, and not change the structure, I think it could work. Just have guys funneling in and around, you know what I mean? And gals funneling around. Like he did with Ring of Honor, I think it could work. And he offered the most money by far for it. So I guarantee you, that's what the shareholders wanted. And by the way, Tony has no relation to Nick Khan. They just have the same last name, just so we're clear. But yeah, you can't already have your spoon in that pot and then have that pot. You can't have your spoon in your own pot, your spoon in this guy's pot, and say, let's merge our pots. Like, make big money between the two of us and run our pots together. That's a no-no. So, I will let you know what happens, because it'll be interesting to see. I think what the shareholders are looking for is for the judge to quash the merger. I think that's what they're looking for, because they want it to be sold outright, which is what should have happened. It shouldn't have stayed under Vince McMahon. When you sell the company, you get the money, you walk away. Unless you make a merger and you make a deal, which he did, but he was already on their board, and their members were already on his board, which is what makes it a no-no. I hope that you guys can understand. Hope that I explained it well. It's important. If my mother was here, she could explain it to me a little bit better, but basically you can't do that. You know what I mean? You can't say, let's merge our two boards, our two companies into one, but I'm on your board of directors and you're on mine, and we'll be on the new, bigger, more powerful board of directors. Yeah, can't do that. So, the only problem that you might have with Tony Khan buying it is Jeopardy laws. Not Jeopardy laws. Is that we have laws against no, it's not Jeopardy. What's the word I'm looking for? One company owning everything that makes that particular product. And there would be a chance that that would be considered what's the word? Hold on. When one company is the only company that makes something. Hold on. Monopoly. The FCC may decide it's a monopoly, although it's not really, because there are quite a few independent promotions, and TNA is its own promotion, even though it has a working relationship with WWE, so maybe they wouldn't consider it a monopoly. But I know you have to go through the FCC, the FTC, all that, to prove you're not monopolizing. Because we have laws against monopolies in this country, which is why AT&T was broken up, because they were the only long-distance game in town, so to speak. And so they were split up, and other companies were allowed to come in. And the first ones that came in were those phone numbers that you had to dial before you dialed your long distance number, 10-10-220, and stuff like that. We had that for a while. Then eventually, whoever your telephone company was in your area took over long distance. But AT&T was the only long distance game, so the FCC broke them up. It only took 50 years, but they did it. So you'd have New England Telephone for your, in this area, for your phone, you know, your local phone, and then you would have AT&T for your long distance. And AT&T was broken up because they said you're a monopoly, you can't be a monopoly, other companies have to be allowed in. And so, and that's when like the 10-10-220s and all them came in. And other companies, before they got into cellular, like Sprint, was a long distance company before it got into cellular. But Sprint was very expensive. So that's why we used the 10-10-220. Then eventually it got to where your phone company, in our case New England Telephone, could offer packages for long distance. Now, whoever your phone company is in your geographic area has your long distance. And it's no longer long distance in that sense, because you pay one flat rate to have the ability to dial long distance, and you don't pay a permanent fee at all to talk long distance. And you had to navigate local long distance as well, not just long distances and calling to speak to a family member in another state, but also local long distance. If you wanted to call the city 20 minutes away, it was still long distance. If you wanted to call some of the neighboring towns, depending on what their exchange was, it was long distance. For instance, Milford. One of their exchanges was not long distance and the other one was. I live in one exchange and my cousin lived in another one. Now he could call the city and it wasn't long distance. It was for me. However, I could call the town of Uxbridge. It was local long distance for him. So he'd call me and say, can you call the youth pastor? Because I can't call him because it's long distance. It was a pain in that sense at that time, but it's all changed now where none of your local numbers are considered long distance at all. There is no more local long distance. And long distance, like calling another state or something, is non-existent in the sense that if you have a landline, you buy a package. And it includes your local long distance. And it's very inexpensive and truthfully, you don't even think about it because it doesn't show up on your bill. Like back in the day, all your calls would show. It doesn't do that anymore. But now, if you don't have that long distance plan, if you have a landline, you can't call out of state at all. It won't even work. So, but nobody has a landline anymore. No regular people. You know, I think a lot of people are saying landlines will go bye-bye. But they're never going to go bye-bye. And I'll tell you why. Because businesses, hospitals, churches, municipalities, they're all going to use landlines. So landlines are never going to go away in that sense. You know, a hospital is not going to go all cellular. They're just not. You know, big businesses are still going to have landlines. Law offices are going to have landlines. You know what I mean? Municipalities are going to have landlines. So, it may be through the cable company, but it's still a landline. What was I going to say? I think that's it. But most average people don't have a landline anymore. They have a cell phone. Including me. And now if my mother was still alive, we'd still have a landline because she swore by her landline. She was an older person, but if the power went out, Mom, you don't have your landline. So I might have been able to talk her into getting rid of it. Not that it was an expensive bill. It was like a $15 bill a month. Because we used Well, it's the same company that did my mother's cell phone, which was Walmart. Only for the landline, it's like $15 a month. You buy a phone card, you put it on, and you have this little box with two little antenna that come up. So, and an advantage to having a cell phone over a landline is it's always with you. So, but I need to give a sample. Trying. I have about an hour. So, that was a long video. But I just wanted to explain monopolies to you, and the phone is the easiest way to explain that. So I hope you enjoyed it. God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And I will see you next time. Bye, guys.